Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Louise Morris, and I'm from Atkins, who are a global engineering and design consultancy. Today, I'm here to talk to you about the nuisance and health impacts of railway noise study that we have recently undertaken for the UIC. The study was commissioned because the rate of complaints from line-side communities remains high, but railway noise emissions are decreasing. The objectives of the scoping study were to acquire a representative picture of the nuisance effect of railway noise and human health, with a particular focus on European railways, and to provide an evidence base of the impact of noise nuisance and human health that can be used to support decision-making activities. This lovely scoping study report provides a critical analysis and assessment of the existing research base, covering a number of themes, including annoyance curves, noise indicators, health indicators, and complaints, and how each of those relate to one another, and also the outcomes of our survey to UIC members that you may have remembered receiving from last year. There's not enough time today to go into each of the topics on that slide in depth. So what I will be doing is giving you a taster of some of the outcomes relating to complaints and the UIC member survey. If we want to be good line-side neighbours, we need to understand what drives people to complain. A noise complaint is a written or verbal expression of dissatisfaction with the noise environment. The human brain has a neural template of what one expects to hear, and when exposed to a new stimulus, it gathers information. If that stimulus is deemed to be typical, that means it has no good or bad meaning. It's just integrated within the past noise exposure, and it's not really considered much further. But if the stimulus is considered unusual, there is a conscious recognition of change, and that is referred to as an arousal. This intrusion into conscious thought can be an annoyance, leading to actions to reduce or stop the noise, such as making a complaint. A particularly interesting finding from looking through all the papers for the literature review aspect of this work was that intermittent events of a higher intensity or distinct character cause more arousals than steady state conditions. So that basically means that those kind of conditions are more likely to cause people to complain. As mentioned before, we issued an online questionnaire to UIC members to better understand the underlying reasons for high complaints and the railway features that cause them. The survey included questions around the regulatory framework, complaints management, noise indicators that people use to investigate complaints, and also the opportunity for respondents to provide case studies on certain situations where there have been complaints and how they have tried to resolve them. Our survey received responses from 18 stakeholders, representing approximately 64% of the railway length in Europe. The survey outcomes showed that the top 3 causes of complaints were freight trains, new and upgraded or altered infrastructure, and maintenance operations, which kind of fits with some of the points that have come up earlier today. Other common causes of complaints were the frequency of services, turnouts and crossovers, tight curves and train horns. The biggest concern raised by complainants was sleep disturbance, and this is the kind of thing that would be caused by an awakening, such as an atypical event, or basically something that elicits that arousal response mentioned before. Other key factors raised were health, real estate depreciation, and perceived inaction. So telling people that there's a problem, but not seeing anything being done to resolve it. And this whole issue of trust that came up in the line side residents breakout that we had earlier today. There are a number of things on this slide, but to focus it a bit more on complaints, it's basically sources of atypical noise where there's a change in noise, intermittent high noise events and sounds of a distinct character that cause that arousal effect are more likely to lead to complaints. And these are best captured by short-term indicators such as LA max, compared to the long-term indicators such as LDEN or LNight that are used in strategic noise maps. Freight trains are a common cause of complaints, as mentioned before, and nighttime is a particularly sensitive period. Future mitigation will need to combine the conventional mitigation efforts with innovative ways to specifically address annoyance and complaints, and we'll all need to work together to try to resolve this. To address various knowledge gaps identified in the study, we have proposed a few potential next steps to try to address them. And they generally fall into these three categories: complaints, noise levels and perceptions of different railway noise sources, and innovative mitigation. The influence of local acoustic and non-acoustic factors was found to be quite an important factor on exposure response relationships, particularly when you look at the World Health Organization guidance. Looking back at the papers that formed that, quite a few of them were from studies based in the Alpine region, which have very distinctive local features that may affect the noise environment. And this is something that needs to be explored more and that needs to be taken into account when devising mitigation solutions. Another way that another potential next step is looking more into the perceptions as described in the presentation before this one. The exposure response relationship for passenger and freight trains might need to be split out separately. At the moment, we've only been looking at a kind of a global response curve, but if people are responding to freight trains differently, then there's a case for looking at the different kinds of train services differently and using that. Studies linking perceptions of different types of rail service, atypical rail noise, such as curve squeal, to noise indicators would also be really beneficial. And that can bring into this the various psychoacoustic indicators as well to better understand how people are perceiving railway noise. As mentioned before, infrastructure managers and operators need to work together to devise mitigation solutions and to make sure that they are cost effective. But there are some alternate strategies that can be used, such as instead of thinking, okay, people are complaining, let's build a noise barrier, let's try to mitigate the health effect that noise causes rather than the noise itself. And that is something that could be further explored. So I've deliberately tried to keep my presentation short and sweet at the end of a long day. And let me know if you have any questions. Alternatively, if any of that interests you, please pick up the book or download it from the UIC website.
Thank you very much, Louise.